Alright, what is up everybody? This is Alex once again with the EOT News Flash. This is the green part of our Amonkhet limited set review. The pre-release is this weekend, and I'm here to basically give you guys a couple of competition by letting you know what I think about certain cards. And mostly all of the cards actually. So we've already done the white, the blue, the black, and the red cards. This is the green set review, like I mentioned. We'll be wrapping up very, very soon with the gold, the artifacts, and the lands. So stay around for that one. If you haven't watched one of these before, we are doing this off of a 4-point scale where you have the ones, which are the cards you should never touch, which I've surprisingly give out very few of in this set. So that's great. We haven't got the artifacts yet, though. So hold your bets for now. Twos are your filler, the generic stuff that just makes your deck all the time. Usually that's what your deck is mostly made up of when you're drafting or playing sealed. It's a majority of the cards that you'll actually be putting in your deck. Threes are premium creatures, premium spells, premium removal, good solid removal, good solid creatures. Vampire Nighthawk jumps to mind. I keep referencing him as being the kind of the key one there. And the fours are the absolute bombs. When you open up your first pack, you go, wow, look at that. I opened one of the gods, or opened one of like Glory Bringer or Archfiend of Ifnir. And that's going to pull you into the color and make you want to draft around that and build your deck around that, or just put it in your sealed pool. Fours are hard to come by, but there are certainly some cards that are worthy of it in this set. We've certainly seen enough of them already. So let's not waste any time and just jump right into it. We have, oh yeah, almost forgot. We also have the S and the B rankings. S is for sideboard cards only, cards that you bring in when your opponent presents you something with it you can't quite solve, a problem that you can't quite solve with your deck as its current configuration. So you board in this card to take care of it. Pretty self-explanatory. B are the cards that you're going to have to build around. They require your deck to do something very specific, whether it's archetype or perhaps color, depending on what the card is calling for. Mostly happens in draft because you can see those cards early and take those cards early, and at that point start to draft around it. Usually when you're playing sealed, it's harder to pull off those synergistic type of decks where you can't guarantee you're going to get all the pieces just because it's completely random, obviously. So that's the explanation there. We did see a lot of those in blue and also in black. So let's get kicked off right here with the green cards. We have Benefactor of Ronas. Who is Ronas? Nobody knows. We'll find out in towards the end of the green cards. Benefaction of Rose is a 2 green sorcery that allows you to reveal the top 5 cards of your library, and you may put a creature card and or enchantment card from among them into your hand. So effectively this is 3 mana, draw 2 if you hit on both. So things like the cartouches, the trials, other various enchantments that kind of like litter out the set can be picked up by this, and that's not bad. That being said, if you miss, you missed. You can't grab lands with this. It's a little bit too narrow for my taste, but that being said, since there is a number of cards in this set that allow you to, make use of them in the graveyard, i.e. Aftermath, i.e. The Embalmed creatures, there is a bit of value to be gained out of this. And so at that, I give it a 2.25. It's a good filler, and it definitely does have some utility, and it's going to dig you down to maybe your bomb creature in your deck. So I kind of like this, but I'm not going to play it too highly, but as it sits, it's pretty solid filler. Next we have Bitterblade Warrior. It's a 1 and a green Jackal Warrior at common 2/2. You may exert it as an attack, so leave it tapped during your next turn. And you have to declare that again. As you attack, you cannot attack with it, have your opponent declare blocks, and then say, oh, I'm exerting it now. That's not how this works. If you do, it gets +1/0 and gains Death Touch until the end of turn. This I like. This is a bear already, which is already playable and limited, and then some. Just saying, I'm going to exert this guy. Every time I attack, it will eventually force your opponent to make a decision, whether they're going to chump block it, or, if the game is dragged on long enough, it's possible going to trade up with one of their bombs perhaps, but they're not going to let this thing go for too long. Again, without having played with the set yet, it is hard to evaluate just how good Exert is, but they are obviously pushing it quite hard. So I could definitely see it being a factor in limited, possibly being a really good mechanic here. So just be wary of when you're actually using this ability. But as it sits, 2.25, somewhere in that, almost a 2.5, just because of that Death Touch ability is really good. Evasion's always great in limited, but pick your battles with the Gazert. Next up, we have Cartouche of Strength. 2 and a green gets you an enchantment or a cartouche at common. Enchants a creature you control, and when it enters the battlefield, you may have enchanted creature fight target creature an opponent controls, and it also gives that creature +1/+1. So 3 mana, permanent boost, +1/+1, and a fight. This is not Prey Upon or Savage Punch for that matter. This is still pretty good though. The fight mechanic is green's way of just dealing with creatures, and the upside of this is that all of the green creatures are freaking huge. So I would say a majority of the time you're going to kill whatever you're attacking, especially with that extra +1/+1 bonus. So I like this thing, but again, it is permanent based boosting or pump. So you can get this thing bounced and lose it automatically. So at that, I have to dock it a little bit, but as it is, 2.25, still really good. Again, plays really well with the trials, of which we've already covered all but the green one, which we'll get to here in a minute. All of them are playable. All the cartouches are playable in their own regard. Just don't go crazy picking them up. Next, we have Champion of Ronas. There's that Ronas guy again. Who is Ronas? 3 and a green gets you a Jackal Warrior at rare, 3/3, and you may exert it whenever it attacks. As you do, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. That's insane, especially when you have possibly a handful of bigger creatures or just good value creatures that possibly have an ETB effect. Just a little, and a 4 mana 3/3 is nothing to scoff at. That's a hill giant right there. That's already playable limited, and to have that massive upside, especially if you have a bomb in your hand, it's like, well, I'm not casting this until like turn 7. Let's put it into play right now. Perfectly fine. I give this guy a 3.5. Just having to tap, and you have to have something in your hand to make it worth it, but that's free creatures, but you're not casting them, so you kind of have to balance it there. But again, a lot of the creatures in this set have a enter the battlefield, not a upon casting trigger. So there you go. I like this guy a lot though. Next up, we have got our next row. We've got Channeler Initiate. 1 and a green gets you a Human Druid at rare. 3/4. That's impressive stats already, but what's the drawback here? It's a pretty big one, actually. When Channeler Initiate enters the battlefield, put 3 -1/-1 counters on target creature you control. Tap it, remove a -1/-1 counter from Champion Initiate, or Channeler Initiate, I'm sorry, and add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So, we've had mana dorks in the past that can tap for only green. We can have them tap for any color. They've all cost 2. I don't quite understand why they are limiting this thing so much. I get it. Mana Acceleration Limited is really powerful. There was a time where Land of War Elf was just the best damn thing you could do on turn 1 in limit and seal and constructed for that matter. That was a definitive statement for a while. I don't know why they are punishing you for playing this, because it's like, okay, it's either a 2 mana 3/4, which is great already, that's a freaking Tarmogoyf level right there, or it's a 0/1 that can tap for mana 3 times. I don't know. There's this weird push-pull, and obviously it could play a dual role. Early in the game it comes down, and it's a mana accelerator. Later in the game, it's just a 3/4 beater. I don't know where to put this guy, honestly. Like 2.25, because it just feels like filler. With utility though, I just don't know. This thing it's still pretty good. It's gonna make my deck. It's gonna play the role that I need it to when it comes down. But as it stands, I'm not really impressed by this guy. I don't get why they were putting a restriction on our mana acceleration. I don't know. 2.25 for me though. I'm not all that impressed. Next up, we have Colossopede. 5 mana, 4/5 gets you a 4 and a green gets you a 5/5 insect at common. And a big ol' wall of flavor text. I sometimes wish that they would just print vanilla creatures, that have no abilities like this, with no flavor text. No context whatsoever. And it's just like, well, that's what it is. And just leave it at that. Obviously, they won't do that. This is perfectly decent filler. 5 mana 5/5s are, completely reasonable to play in limited. It's a big body. It's the top of your curve. It's going to beat down and eat some guys. It's just not all that impressive, honestly. At least it's bigger than your average, bear. Next we have Crocodile of the Crossing. There are a lot of crocodiles in this set. I am all aboard the crocodile train. 3 mana, 3 and a green gets you a crocodile, 5/4 at uncommon with haste, no less. When it enters battlefield, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature you control. All right, we're going back to those black creatures, those aggressively costed black creatures. Obviously this falls in the same camp as Channel or Initiate, but I'm not convinced that's where you want to go with this. If you're putting -1/-1 counters on your creatures, they're the ones that have already lost their utility. To keep these guys as big as possible, like Plague Belcher, and just smash with these guys. Put it on something else. Don't put it on the Crocodile and just start hammering with these guys. I like the Crocodile a whole lot. 2.25, almost a 2.5 for me. If it was maybe one cheaper, but then we're kind of crossing back into that Plague Belcher territory, and it's kind of the same card with haste, obviously. But there is still a lot to like here. I like these creatures that kind of make you make the decision. Do I put it on this guy and make it a perfectly reasonable 4 mana, 4/3, or can I put it on another creature and maybe just not have it be as useful anymore? Really, really interesting way to kind of compare the dynamics. I like this guy a lot, though. Next up, we have Defiant Greatmaw. 2 and a green gets you a 4/5 Hippo. That's right, Hippo at an uncommon. When it enters the battlefield, put 2 -1/-1 counters on target creature you control. Whenever you put 1 or more -1/-1 counters on Defiant Greatmaw, remove a -1/-1 counter from another target creature you control. Holy cow! So, yes, play this thing. It's already really powerful. It's a 2.5 for me. That's a massive body for not a lot of mana. Slap those counters on something else. I don't quite get the rest of this card, though. Whenever you put one or more -1/-1 counters on Defiant Greatmaw, remove a -1/-1 counter from another creature you control. So it's saying that you have to do it. It's like, okay, I'll play Greatmaw, and then I'll play Crocodile of the Crossings, put the counter from Crocodile onto the Hippo to have the Hippo take a counter off of another creature of mine that's already in play. I guess there's an engine somewhere here that's really just trying to make you use these -1/-1 counters to your advantage. I'm not convinced, though. I will have to see this in practice, or maybe I'm just not seeing, the forest of the trees. I don't know, but still, the Defiant Greatmaw is a very, very powerful card. 3 mana, 4/5 is nothing to joke about. And if your little weenie creature is going to get killed anyway on the backswing and you're just going to block with it and let it die, who cares? 2.5 for me. I think this guy's really cool. Moving right along, we've got Dissenter's Deliverance. 1 and a green, instant, destroy target artifact. Cycles for a green. This is a perfect example of a sideboard card. Again, when we get to the artifacts, you will see that there are barely any worth playing. And only if your opponent presents you with a specific, I think there's 2 that I've identified as actually worth worrying about, that's when you might want to bring this in. And if they don't show it to you, you just cycle it. Don't play this just because you can cycle it. Do-nothing cards are not worth the slot when you can just play another spell. So keep that in mind. Don't think that just because you can cycle a card, it makes it main deckable if you can't use the effect. That's just not the way these things should be looked at. They're just not worth it, I don't think. Just don't evaluate them in that regard. Play an actual spell, not a circumstantial removal spell. That's all I'm going to say. Sideboard only. Next up, we've got Exemplar of Strength. 1 and a green gets you a 4/4 Human Warrior. And wait a second. Is that Billy D. Williams? Is that Lando Calrissian? That's Lando Calrissian right there. Anyway, whenever it enters the battlefield, put 3 -1/-1 counters on target creature you control. Whenever it attacks, remove a -1/-1 counter from it. If you do, gain 1 life. So you're telling me to put them all on this guy, have it attack, make it a 2/2, I'll gain a life. Like, I get what they're trying to do here. I really do. I'm just not sure it's going to work or not, honestly. I have no problem playing this as a 2 mana 1/1 and then getting a 2/2 out of it the next turn and gaining a life, and then it's a 3/3 and a 4/4, so on and so forth. I get that. That all makes sense, and that makes this a very, very good card because it's not very threatening in the early game, but it will get there. I give it a 2.5 just because of the upside on it. This one can take care of its own -1/-1 counters, while unlike Crocodile and Defiant Greatmaw, it's a little bit more of a hoop to jump through. This guy's a self-contained sort of engine by himself, so that's why I like this guy a little bit better. He gets a 2.5 from me, and again, that's Lando Calrissian on that card. That's the leader of Cloud City. Just saying. Next up, we have Giant Spider making his glorious return after being in the core sets for like 17 some odd years, and they finally kicked him out. Don't quote me on that number, but it's been a Magic symbol for a long time. 3 and a green, 2/4, get you a spider with reach. It's a 10 out of 10 on the nostalgia scale because this card is almost as old as the game is, for that matter. It's a 2.5 on the scale, though, because that's a big old body. It's hard to get through, and it's going to be blocking all of those little flyers. I'm forgetting the name of the spider from Modern Masters, that when it dies, it replaces itself with a black copy of itself. It's a token. But that card's annoying as hell to play against. So is this. 2.5 for me, though. Next up, we have Gift of Paradise. 2 and a green for an enchantment aura. Enchants the land. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. And you can now tap that land to add 2 mana of any one color to your mana pool. So this is our common ramp spell here. It's not bad, actually. Gaining the life is nothing to scoff at, in a game of limited, especially if you're playing against possibly a really aggressive red deck. And just being able to ramp your mana from then on with any color. And obviously it's paired mana, so you can't go red, blue, or whatever. But this is a great way to fix your mana and get to some of the higher casting costs that are in green, which there are a bunch of. Well, I'm not going to say a bunch, but there's enough of them to make you kind of think that this is a relevant spell. I like this. I give this a 2.25 for myself, though. Next up, we have got Greater Sandstorm. Here's a perfect example of one of those giant creatures. 5 green gets you a creature worm, 7/7 at common. Can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Cycles for 2. And I also gave it a 2. A note on cycling here really quick, guys, is that when you cycle a card, don't be like, if you just aren't going to be casting the spell anytime soon, don't be afraid to cycle it. It's going to dig you to a card that you might need instead. If sitting on 4 mana and you draw this, and you're like, well, this is not doing anything right now. There is nothing wrong with just pitching it right then and there, or waiting until the end of your opponent's end step and then cycling. Don't think you have to hold on to these massively expensive spells to get value out of them. Now, that being said, this is a great top end for a sort of a mid-rangey green deck, especially when a lot of the creatures in this set that are not in green cannot really hold this thing back because of their power. As it stands, though, it's just a 2. It's a really big body. I mean, you have to really convince me to play a 7-drop in limited without a considerable amount of ramp, like Gift of Paradise. I might be wrong on this guy, though. There's a potential for this thing to be a little bit better than I'm giving it credit for. But as it stands, it's just a big worm. Next, we have Hapatra. Is that right? Hapatra. Yeah, Hapatra's Mark. 1 green instant, target creature you control gains hexproof until the end of turn and remove all -1/-1 counters from it. This is the first instance of being able to remove -1/-1 counters since Leech, which was a card that lets you remove poison counters, technically, from a player. I think it also got rid of -1/-1 counters as well. That's a long way back in Magic's past, so don't worry about that, guys. That's kind of cool, though, to say, all right, I'm going to block with my, Crocodile of the Crossing. I put a counter on it. I'm going to make it hexproof, and I'm going to boost it up a little bit. So that's pretty cool. I like combat tricks like this that have more than just, the face value of hexproof. Obviously it doesn't grant, a toughness or a power boost, which is fine. But the ability to remove all the counters off of your creature, which in green is kind of a big deal, is not bad at all. I like this quite a bit. I give Hapatra's Mark a 2.25. Better than average filler, definitely, for sure. And you will get blown out by this eventually. I'm just going to say it right now. Next, we have Harvest Season. I wanted to call this Harvest Storm so bad, and I cannot tell you why. For 2 and a green, it gets you a sorcery at rare. Search your library for up to X basic land cards, where X is the number of tapped creatures you control, and put those cards onto the battlefield tapped. Then shuffle your library. You attack, and you get some lands out of your deck. I think the break even for this thing is, I want to say it's no good at 1. Like, 1 is just terrible. At 2, you're getting somewhere. 3, you're starting to push the realm of rule value. If you've got 4 tap creatures, this just drew you 4 freaking cards and ramped you up that much more. So I like this card for what it can do. In standard, this has the potential to do some very stupid things with Cryptolith Rights and, I'm forgetting the mechanic from Aether Revolts, the Convoke for artifacts. Man, shoot. Anyway, It's not innovate. That's not right. I forget. Anyway, Harvest Season, I give this a 2.5 just because it can enable some very, very explosive leaps in mana production. And if you're playing a mana-hungry deck that just wants to go way over the top, this is the way to do this. 2.5 for me. Next, we have Haze of Pollen. 1 and any green gets you an instant at common. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. Cycles for 3. This card is crap. This is one of the few ones that I gave out. I do not like fog effects. I think they are pointless. They're not what you want to be doing in limited, because it only in the very rare instance where they are swinging for lethal and you're like, I'm not going to block, I'm going to take it and apparently die, and they're like, oh, I got you, and then you're just like, oh no, Haze of Pollen, and then swing back for the win. That's the only time this is even remotely worth it. As it stands, don't touch this. It's crap. It gets a 1. Moving on to a card that is a whole hell of a lot better, but I still have a problem with this card. Honored Hydra. 5 and a green gets you a 6/6 Snake Hydra at rare with trample and embalm for 3 and a green. All right, good stuff out of the way. It's huge. They have to deal with this thing twice. And it's an absurd amount of power for a very, very low, investment. When you're casting things like Benefaction of Ronas, this puts it in the graveyard and you get it back on turn 4. Insane. Now, my problem with this card, why is it a Snake Hydra? I don't understand the type line here at all. Why is it not just Hydra? Yes, I get it's like Cobra heads. I understand that. Why don't they get just a really big snake then? This card bothers me on a fundamental design aesthetic level. The card itself is fine. Remove the picture, we're absolutely okay. But as it stands, it just bugs me. Moving on, we have Hooded Brawler. 2 and a green gets you a 3/3 Naga Warrior. You may exert it as it attacks, and when you do, it gets +2/+2 until the end of turn. That is perfectly reasonable filler right there. That is a solid 2.25 for me. 3 mana 3/2s are perfectly playable limited, and to be able to beat through it on certain cases, even better. Awesome card. Next, we have Initiate's Companion. 1 and a green gets you a cat. 3/1. When it deals combat damage to a player, untap target creature or land. This guy got a 2.25 for me, simply because the body's a little bit too weak. Obviously, you might get through 1 or 2 shots with it early in the game, but after a while, it will be completely stonewalled by bigger creatures than it. And that untap ability, it's cute. But if this was any more powerful, if that ability was as powerful as it sounds like it is, this would not be a common. This feels like it could be pushed a little bit more and maybe possibly be an uncommon. But as it stands, there's not a lot to be gained out of untapping a target creature or a land, in my opinion at least. So 2.25, but 3/1 3/1 body is relatively decent here. Next we have is Manglehorn. 2 and a green gets you a 2/2 beast at uncommon that enters the battlefield and destroys an artifact of which there are none relevant in the set, except for 2. And artifacts your opponent's control enter the battlefield tapped. Again, not relevant at all. If this was constructed, sure. Modern, possibly. I've heard some conversations. Standard, sure, whatever. Blows up Heart of Kirin, whatever. As it stands though in limited, it is simply a 3 mana 2/2, which is just below average in my book. This is a 2.25 for me. Obviously better in constructed. What are you going to do? Next we have is Naga Vitalist. 1 and a green for a Naga Druid. It's a 1/2 that taps to add 1 mana of any color that a land that you control could produce. That was horribly said. Add to your mana pool 1 mana of any type that a land you control could produce. There we go. That's the way to say that, actually. So you control a swamp. It can tap for a black. You control a mountain. Taps for red. Control a forest. Taps for green. You see where I'm going with this. It's not going to be, some Birds of Paradise crazy thing. But this is better than the Channeler Initiate, if you ask me. Because you don't have to worry about the -1/-1 counters. Yes, the thing got bigger as the game went on, but this is just better. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. But a 2 mana 1/2 that ramps you, this thing isn't attacking ever. This is constantly putting me ahead of the curve. This is how you generate card advantage because you're ahead of your opponent's mana. And that's a really huge advantage to gain in the game of Magic. 2.5 for me, enough said. Next we have is Oashra? Golly. Oastra's Cultivator. 1 green for a 0/3 human druid at common. Pay 2 and a green, tap it, sacrifice it, search your library, basic land, put it in play tapped, shuffle your library. Simple stuff right there. 2.25, decent ramp spell. What else can you ask for? Next up, we have Honorary Kudu. Kadu? Sure. 2 and a green, 2 at 3/4. Enters the battlefield. It's an antelope too. That's kind of neat. It's common. Enters the battlefield, puts a -1/-1 counter on target creature you control. So that's, pretty solid. Yeah, that's perfectly reasonable if you're going to put it on something like, Oastra's Cultivator. You're not going to block with it. You're going to block with it anyway. Who cares? Yeah, this is solid playable right here. 2.25 for me. No, 2.5 actually. My mistake. This is uncommon level of commons here. I like cards that just push the envelope. Obviously, it's green, so you do be playing more. Green is just a bigger class of creature in general. So this is reflecting that. I like the design a lot. Next up, we have Pouncing Cheetah, 2 and a green for a 3/2 cat at common with flash. It's a miracle. Bow, bow, bow. Gets a 2.5 for me because flash is awesome, and this card is pretty sweet actually. Again, 3/2s for 3, awesome. Upside, even better. Moving right along, we have Prowling Serpopard. What the hell, Wizards? 1 green gets you a cat snake. This falls in line with the wily Bandar, the pig monkey, or whatever the hell it was from Kaladesh. It's a rare, it's a 4/3, can't be countered. Creature spells you control can't be countered. This might as well be a blank card in limited environments for the most part, unless your opponent's playing blue. At that point, they might have Essence Scatter. I don't think it's going to get there in Standard. It might do something in Modern because of Collected Company. Whatever. But as it stands, this card is just not that great in Limited, other than just being a 3 and a 4/3, which is perfectly fine, and therefore it gets a 2.5. Because of upside text every once in a while, and it's a snake cat. I don't even want to think about the logistics of the internal organs of a snake cat. That's just weird. Next up, we have Corey Hauler. 3 and a green gets you a 4/3 common camel. When it enters the battlefield, for each kind of counter on target permanent, put another counter of that kind on it, or remove one from it. So, loyalty counters, -1/-1 counters, +1/+1 counters, filibuster counters, eyeball counters. I'm not going to do all the counters that are possible in Magic, but this is our proliferate effect in this set, and I like this a lot. If your guys like Defiant Great Maw, Crackle the Crossings, Channel or Initiate, have counters on them, take them off, the -1/-1 counters in particular. Put more counters on your creatures that already have +1/+1 counters on them. Add more counters to your Planeswalkers. This card is really, really good, and a 4-mana 4/3 is already good by itself. It says upside. 2.5 for me. Next up, we've got Ronas himself, the Indomitable. 2 and a green gets you a legendary creature god, 5/5, Death Touch, and indestructible because it's a snake. Death Touch snakes makes sense. Cannot block or attack unless you control another creature with power 4 or greater. That's a bit of a hoop to jump through, except for the fact that it can give another creature +2/+0 and give it trample to the end of turn by paying the small fee of 2 and a green. It's a 4. It's another god. Of course it's good. Moving on. Next up, we have Sandworm Convergence. 6 green enchantment at rare. Wowzas. Creatures with flying can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. That's pretty insane. It's like a moat. At the beginning of your end step, create a 5/5 green worm creature token. Holy crap. If you can get to this mana, this will eventually take the game over because the inevitability is written right on there. This is like that scene in Dune where what's his name is riding the sandworm. Ba, 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 da. The theme escapes me, but it's a great scene. Check it out. The movie's mediocre at best. I want to say that Queen did the soundtrack for that moment. It's in my head now, but I can't recreate it, unfortunately. I apologize. I know you guys are just dying to hear that, obviously. That being said, at 8 mana, that's a big hurdle to jump over. So without the necessary ramp to go along with this sits somewhere at the filler level, unfortunately, from just having a massive effect. Obviously, this is an EDH card if there ever was one. But if you can get to it, if you've got the ramp, if you have Naga Vitalist, if you have Gift of Paradise, this card becomes a little bit more tangible and it elevates itself to somewhere around a 2.5, maybe even a 3, just because of how absurdly powerful this effect is. So ramp into it and then play it. Moving right along, we've got Scaled Behemoth. Holy cow, these things just keep getting bigger. 4 green for a crocodile. Now, the art of this is very, very creepy because that crocodile is the size of a small, like a bus, like a double-decker bus you might see on the streets of London. And these people are tiny. They're going to be eaten by the giant behemoth. I love this. 6/7 for 4 and 2 green, uncommon crocodile with hexproof. How the hell do you kill this thing? How do you block this thing realistically? If this thing gets trampled at any point, game over. 2.5 because I like giant green creatures like this. And 6 as opposed to 8 is a very reasonable mana to get to in Limited. There you go. Next up we have Shed Weakness. The snake is kind of, shedding its skin or whatever. For a single green, you can instant at common. Target creature you control, or target creature, not control, just creature, gets +2/+2 at the end of turn, and you may remove a -1/-1 counter from it. Here's where we see the payoff. Having cards like this and Hepatra's Mark, which allow you to take off -1/-1 counters, makes cards like Defiant Great Maw actually worth it, because the downside of those guys is that it just makes your team weaker, or itself weaker if they bounce a creature in response to you casting it and force you to put those counters onto the creature. This is how you get around that, and this is what makes cards like that really dangerous. Because all of a sudden, that Defiant Great Maw, which was a little bit weaker, all of a sudden is bigger, and then bigger yet more because of the -1/-1 counter being removed from it. I like surprise cards like this. This is a great combat trick, really solid, 2.25, excellent combat trick, but it's still just a combat trick. Next up we have Sheafet. Sheafet Monitor. 5 and a green gets you an uncommon lizard. 6/5 that cycles. Whenever you cycle it, you may search your library for a basic land card or a desert card? We'll get to those soon enough. Put it on the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Note that it doesn't say tapped. That's interesting. Whatever. This thing is, again, 6 mana is not unreasonable to get to, and cycling for 3 and a green to continuously produce more mana, ramp up to more mana, and get whatever these weird desert cards are. Again, more on those in a bit. This is really good. 6 mana is easy to get to in Limited. 2.5 for me. I'm liking the green cards in this set. Next, we have Sixth Sense. For a single green mana, you get an enchantment or at uncommon, enchants a creature, and that enchanted creature has, whenever this creature deals damage to or common damage to a player, you may draw a card. So this is Keening Sense, Ophidian Eye. I didn't realize there was this guy in the background trying to Lizzie Borden, this Egyptian chick's head off, and then I realized, she has the Sixth Sense to notice the guy behind her, and she's gonna whip around, grab the axe, and karate chop him in the chest or whatever. I don't know. This isn't a bad card by any means. If you've got an invasive guy that's going to continuously get through, whether it has menace or flying, what have you, this is a pretty solid card to put on top of it, because constantly drawing cards every combat is really, really powerful. So I gave this a 2.25 just because it is a bit of a blowout if they were to bounce the creature and you lose this. But at the same time, the advantage you gain of it is still pretty good. I like this card a little bit. Not a bad card at all. Next up, we have Spidery Grasp. 2 and a green instant gets you a common untapped target creature. It gets +2/+4 and gains reach until the end of turn. So this turns your creature into a giant spider. That's pretty freaking sweet. And that art, that poor Aven Mind Sensor or that bird wizard guy in the foreground, big old spider gonna eat it up. That's gonna haunt my nightmares now, actually. Ugh. Anyway, 2.25. This is a pretty expensive combat trick, but when it works, and there's a better, there's a better version of this for the same amount of mana with a much bigger blow potential on it. But as it stands, I like this card pretty much. It's a 2.25 for me. It's just a little bit more expensive than I like for my combat tricks to be usually. Next up, we have stringing, or is that stinging? Man, the new typeface on these cards is just kind of weird sometimes. Stringing or Stinging Shot. Wow. Single green gets you a common instant. Put 3 -1/-1 counters on target creature with flying, cycling for 2. Now, take everything that I said about those cards, just because you can cycle them and they're playable at that point, and not being playable, I should say, and throw them out the window. This is main deckable 100% because there are enough flyers in the set to give you a fit. I like this a whole lot. 2.5 for me. This card is insane. This will take down a majority of the flyers, and if it's not down completely, it will weaken it considerably. This card's really great. I like it a lot. 2.5. Next up, we got Synchronized Strike, 2 and a green, instant uncommon. Okay, this is the better version of Spider Grasp without the reach. Untap 2 target creatures. They both get +2/+2 until the end of turn. This is your ambush blocker. This card's really great. +2/+2 is nothing to scoff at. And at 3 mana, getting to do 2 creatures, that's insane. I like this card a whole lot. 2.5 for me because the blow-up potential of this card is insanely high. Next up, we have Trial of Strength. 2 and a green gets you an enchantment at uncommon. When Trial of Strength enters the battlefield, get a 4/2 green beast creature token. Pretty sweet. And the cartouche thing bounces back to your hand. As long as you got cartouches to put this thing down, I'm fine with it. 3 mana for a 4/2, absolutely fine with upside. Go for it. As it stands, though, it's just a 2.25 for me, just because it's a one-time deal unless you have an abundance of the cartouches and you have to draw them. So it might be better than I think it is, but typically I'm not a big fan of enchantments that give you creatures just because the token is so vulnerable to just bounce spells. So it's what it is. Next up, we've got Vizier of the Menagerie. 3 and a green for a Naga Cleric at Mythic Rare, so this has to be good, right? 3/4, you may look at the top card of your library. This is no longer the reveal the top card of your library, Corsair, Crewfix, Oracle Moldiah nonsense, because that was so annoying to keep track of, especially when you have fetch lands to deal with as well. This is just, I have a response, look. Oh, it's that, I respond, I'll look. I respond to that too, I'll look. And of course, just for fun. You may cast the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, awesome. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast creature spells. That's super important here because now this goes in all kinds of decks. I've seen some people talking about this in Bant Eldrazi in Modern, and to think of that, this card going in that, fixing your Blood Moon issues, I'm all on board for that. As it stands, though, this card is absolutely insane. I'm going to scroll down. I give it a 4 because this card's crazy. Crazy good. Next up, we have Watchful Naga. 2 and a green gets you a Naga Wizard. It's uncommon. It's a 2/2. When you may exert it as it attacks, and when you do, draw a card. Again, 3 mana 2/2s are already playable in limited. Ones that draw cards and have upside, even better. So, 2.25 just because the buy is a little bit weaker, but the card draw I think is worth it. It's interesting to see green have card draw like this. So it could actually be better just because green doesn't typically get this, and that might be what green needs to really be. Obviously it's been good in past limited sets, so this might just be the step up it needs to be just really great in this limited environment. Really cool card. Where's its head? Oh, okay, I can see it. Yeah, never mind. Our last green card here is our split card in green. Mouth to Feed. The front half is Mouth, 2 and a green sorcery, gets you a 3/3 hippo, cool. And Feed is a 3 and a green sorcery with Aftermath, cast from your graveyard, and you may draw a card for each creature you control with power 3 or greater. If this even remotely only draws you 2 cards, I'm already in business. At 3 cards, great. 4 cards and beyond, just gravy on top. I don't even care. Hippo gravy at that. Yeah, this card's great. 2.5, 3 mana 3/3s, whatever, that have just benefits towards the late game when the board is stalled out and you need to recoup your hand. Heck of a card right here. 2.5 for me. So that does it for all the green cards. But wait, Alex, you might be saying, where are the invocations in green? Oh yeah, there aren't any. I don't know why. I get that this is Nicol Bolas's plane. This is his home. And obviously the green mana is, obviously because of his Grixis influence, a little bit weaker, I guess. But there's got to be something they could have put in this set. I don't know, like Berserk, Terastodon. I mean, there's some big, nasty green creatures out there they could have put in this set. Natural Order. How much more, black can you get? Natural freaking Order. I mean, sack this creature to get something bigger. Like that's a very kind of blackish thing to do in green. I don't know. I'm gonna stop whining about the invocations. Maybe we'll see some green ones in Our Devastation. Who knows? But for the time being, that is the end of the green cards. Thank you. We'll be wrapping up the set very, very soon with the gold, the artifacts, and the lands. I'm going to try and get that out tonight, but I've got to work tomorrow in the morning. So, I appreciate you guys watching. As always, check out the rest of the set review. Let me know how your pre-release goes down in the comments. Is there a favorite card in this set so far? Is there a strategy or an archetype that you're looking forward to drafting? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. There's all kinds of fun things going on here, a majority of the time at least. Check us out every week over on the EOT Newsflash at the MTG Cast. Check us out on Facebook. Just look for EOT Newsflash. Over on Twitter at EOT Newsflash. Send all love, hate, and respect to EOTNewsflash at gmail.com. And since Steven's not here, we're going to do it again with some more cards later. Thanks for watching, guys.